Hello everyone and welcome back to another GTA Online guide. In today's video we're going to follow up from the previous video where we talked about street racing. Well, now we're going to delve into the world of stunt racing, and let me tell you, it's one place that can be the most fun you'll ever have, but it can also be a place where you'll just want to chop your keyboard in half. So let's get to the video. So a lot of the tips and tricks that I mentioned in the previous video carry on over to stunt racing, but obviously the tracks that you play in the cunning stunts races are a lot different than simple street racing. For one, all of the tracks are situated either in the sky or on a course with so many barricades you'll wonder how the paint on your car still exists. So let's get to my first tip on stunt racing. If you're going to be doing supercar races, always choose the Anis RE7B, and if it allows for custom cars, make sure your custom Anis RE7B has the stock wheels and carbon spoiler attachments, because if you don't, you're going to be massively underpowered by those who are using those attachments. At the start of each stunt race, like in a normal street race, you're all packed together, and when you all set off, it can be manic, to the point where you have a really hard time getting down the straight. It can mean an overall loss for an entire race if something bad happens to you. A lot of people aren't there to race. All they want to do is just smash you to bits and make you tear your hair out by blocking you. Speaking of blocking, there's something you gotta watch out for when you make it near the next lap, or more importantly, the finish line. Take a look at this clip. I'm in second place on the final corner and my opponent is far ahead of me. Looks hopeless for me to win, right? Nah, cause this happened to him. That, my friend, is what I call a race breaker, or as many racers like to call them, cancer. It's a troll whose only desire is to ruin your race experience. They wait at the finish line to act as a sort of blocker, and they are very difficult to avoid. They can be the difference between first place and smashing your keyboard to bits. At least it worked out for me though. My advice to avoid them is to check ahead on the track, and if you find a player icon just idle there, it's most likely a sure sign of a race breaker. Depending on how close you are to other people you're racing to get first place, you can either go ahead and take on the race breaker by yourself, in which case the best luck to you, good sir. Or, if you're close to the other racers aiming for first place, you can stick close to them side by side if you will, in hopes that it'll reduce the chances of the race breaker aiming for you. A lot of the tracks in Cunning Stunts DLC feature a lot of verticality to them, and a lot of them have clever shortcuts that aren't really intended to be taken by the track makers. Here's a couple that I'll share with you. On Downtown Loop, at the first loop, you can skip the loop altogether by aiming your car just right and using it as a small ramp to get to the other side of the gap. This is pretty dangerous though, so I'd recommend you give it a few laps practice before trying it in a real race. In the track Racing Alley, where you have to go to the bottom of the massive ramp that leads to the sudden ramp at the end, you can skip taking the ramp altogether at the end by either not going down the ramp or by taking a very risky maneuver at the bottom. This shortcut is also incredibly dangerous due to the fact that you're going so fast and there's a couple curbs that your car has to ride over at high speed, which can more often than not result in you spinning out. If you can take these shortcuts, however, you can skip a massive amount of time lost just aimlessly flying through the air, and massively improve your lap times by a whole lot. As you go through some of the courses and the stunt tracks, you'll find that there's a common obstacle in the form of the huge ramp, followed immediately by a checkpoint that's close to the landing area. This is a huge problem because sometimes you can go too fast and end up flying over the checkpoint altogether and missing it, meaning that you have to turn around and touch that checkpoint before you can continue in the race. This problem is more apparent if you're driving in a glitched RE7B, because the car goes so fast that you end up on the other side of the continent. To avoid this, simply brake just before the end of the ramp, and you should slow down just enough to hit the checkpoint. And for my last tip for the video, which is something I should have mentioned in the previous video, is that if there's a lot of racers racing with you, make sure to put a $100 bet on yourself, just in case you win. Because if you manage to beat someone who was very overconfident and puts a bet of $10,000 on themselves, the payout for such a small bet can be substantial. Look here, I put in $100 and I ended up winning over $3,000. Profit! And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the Pyro Realm Gaming channel if you're new for loads more GTA Online guides coming to you very soon. See you around!